Where am I? Where's Mary? Ah! Wait, you've been watching over me? Thank you. I need to get back to Mary. She must be worried. Easier said than done, though. I have no idea which direction to go. You know where to go? Well, I guess anywhere's better than here. Lead the way. Hey, have you heard about One Piece? When we last left off, Crocodile dismissed the officer agents to enact his final plan. Karoo was heading off to the king with information, and the Straw Hat crew along with Vivi were united in their goal: defeat Crocodile. Oda has introduced to us the underlying conflict of Alabasta, the stealing of the rain by Crocodile, and how he framed the king. Oda also humanized the conflict, showing us who the rebels are and how they genuinely care about the country and are only rebelling out of a perceived necessity. So, with his introduction to Alabasta out of the way, it's time to raise the stakes, get our characters face to face with Crocodile, and introduce the theme of Crocodile as a villain. Let's look at how Oda does this and what other juicy meaning we can derive as we wander deep into the heart of the Grandeur of Alabasta. In retrospect, I probably should have ended the last part covering chapter 167 instead of 166, as it's here that Oda really finishes up the setup for Alabasta. But if I did that, then I couldn't end on Vivi's revelation that she's not alone, so whatever. That does mean that this first chapter after that does set up the movements of all the important players. The Straw Hats are on the way to confront Crocodile directly at Rainbase, interestingly called the City of Dreams. And though the beating sun and difficult journey may appear as relentless as the previous day, there is a change of attitude amongst the crew. First, Chopper is being a little trooper. In contrast to his struggles during the previous leg of the journey, with the excuse of being a winter animal not adapted to handle the heat, he's toughing it out today. And it's cute that both Sanji and Zoro notice how he's really doing his best. I like to think that he's trying extra hard because, like the rest of the crew, he's also feeling more unified after Luffy and Vivi's confrontation. Secondly, and more importantly, is that Luffy is really taking care of the water he got from Toto. As I pointed out last part, he's now understanding the value of water, or at least this water in particular. I think I should also take note that Zoro's sense of direction is getting worse. It was very subtle before. He briefly mentions it to Luffy at first. He was kind of lost at Drum Island, but that was still within the realm of plausible deniability. But now, he heads in a completely wrong direction. I think this is the moment that Oda takes the brakes off of this recurring gag, and it's only going to get worse from here. Worse in a funny way. The last thing we see is Vivi promising to feed Luffy until he explodes once he beats Crocodile, so he's got something to look forward to. Meanwhile, Koza and the rebels are ready and waiting to fight. They're only missing one thing: weapons. We see an interaction between Koza and a little boy, Kappa, and we get definitive confirmation of what the flashback implied. The rebels don't want to fight. They simply cannot see any other way forward, and though it's subtle, we're seeing that Koza is doing his best to also protect his people. He's not enraged, wanting anyone and everyone to grab a weapon to fight. He too thinks war is a horrible, terrifying thing. He doesn't want children involved, only adults who can comprehend what they're getting into. King Cobra is also trying to hold his kingdom together as best he's able. Even though he doesn't have all the information, he's pieced together that someone has been stirring up the rebellion. He shows off his kingly qualities again and again, refusing to go fight the rebels, telling the people under his command that the people are the kingdom. We get our final two important named characters, Pearl and Chaka, the Falcon and Jackal respectively. And finally Karoo arrives at the capital, and we get this really cute panel of Karoo protecting the sign of our fellowship. Like I've said, Karoo is not just an extra, he's just as part of the group as Vivi is. Finally, King Cobra's side knows who they need to fight: Crocodile. And here is where we get to see the difference between Vivi and her father. Both love their country, both care for the people, but, unlike Vivi, Cobra knows that to be the royalty of a nation, he must at times justly utilize the power under his command. He doesn't have Vivi's naivety that things can be solved without bloodshed. In a way, Cobra mirrors Luffy. There's no way that blood won't be shed if they're going up against Crocodile. Unlike Wapol, who used his power to oppress his own people and enrich himself, King Cobra uses power to protect his people even at the risk of his own life. While Wapol fled a pirate threat, Cobra is determined to face it head on. As we see Pearl and Chaka's reaction, we understand that this is why Cobra is a model king. It's not just that he cares about his people and loves his nation, but he knows when he must use his power as king. He is the balance between heart and power, and the model king Oda introduces as a measure for other royalty when going forward in One Piece. The final page, and really why I should have ended last part on this chapter, is the map that Oda shows us, outlining the movements of the three major parties, and as for what Baroque Works is up to, their plan starts in 17 hours. Which then updates to 1 hour the next chapter as the sun rises. Cool. Just before the Straw Hats make it to Rainbase, we have a few more things established. Nami asked Usopp to make something for her, and he presents to her the climate baton. Sanji calls himself Prince Charming, and as Zoro says, "Move it, Prince." Well, that's a bit of an outsized reaction from Sanji for a relatively harmless remark. Into the chest it goes. And finally, the crew then get reminded that Baroque Works probably knows that they're here, seeing that both Bon Clay and Mr. 3 are present. They enter the so-called City of Dreams, run into Smoker, and the gang all gets split up. It's a fun scene, but not too much to point out aside from two things. Firstly, a quick confirmation that the Baroque Works rank and file have been distributed the photos Mr. 2 produced of the crew. Then, more interestingly, as Luffy baits Smoker to chase him, and I kind of like that Luffy is playful with Smoker, who also doesn't seem to dislike it. When Smoker catches Luffy, Luffy seems to have prepared a countermeasure. It can't really hurt Smoker, but it has defended against how Luffy was previously captured by Smoker. Luffy hasn't taken that loss to Smoker laying down. He's probably been thinking about what he can do next time. That is to say, this is the first time we've seen Luffy face someone a second time after losing, and Luffy has grown between these two exchanges. They burst into Crocodile's casino, and in one of my favorite hard cuts, we see Luffy, Zoro, Nami, Usopp, and Smoker have all been captured. Hilarious. We get introduced to a new/old concept as Smoker explains the concept of Sea Prism Stone. Stone that emits an energy identical to the oceans. That is to say, it can disable Devil Fruit abilities, and so we get a most likely answer as to what that prison bullet used against Alvida and Buggy was made of. Also, Smoker says that they're only found in one place in the ocean, so I'll throw that in the chest as an interesting tidbit of info. Crocodile shows up, smug, and hints that Vivi is about to be captured, nothing that needs to be pointed out. True to Crocodile's word, Vivi is about to be captured, surrounded by Baroque Works members, and I do find it amusing that Vivi is competent enough at fighting that she takes out a decent amount of them, but we never get to see her succeed because, in my opinion, Oda wants to reinforce the theme that Vivi's strength isn't in her fighting prowess. That is, until Pell the Falcon appears, this time as a literal falcon, having consumed the tweet fruit falcon type. One of... I'll just read it. One of only 5 flying devil fruits that are known to exist. I'll put this line in the chest, but for different reasons than usual. Pell's introduction, unfortunately for him, only serves one, maybe two narrative purposes. First, to show off Miss All Sunday's devil fruit abilities, the flower fruit, previously hinted at all the way back at Whiskey Peak, and secondly, to show that Alabasta cannot take on Baroque Works. Pell is introduced as Alabasta's greatest warrior, and Miss All Sunday defeats him effortlessly. The warriors of Alabasta are by no means weak, but against Crocodile and his organization, Oda immediately makes clear that they are completely outmatched. It would also be remiss to say that the introduction of the flower fruit also has expanded the possibilities of devil fruits. Before this reveal, devil fruits have, more or less, affected the user's body's abilities. Even in the Grand Line, we've seen changing weight, turning explosive, being able to produce wax, and changing appearance. Wapol's power was probably the most strange, able to combine two people by eating them, but that was still confined to a process happening within his own body. Miss All Sunday can sprout her limbs seemingly anywhere nearby, though it's still technically her own body that's being sprouted. She can impact the environment around her without requiring direct contact. It's like the animals, the type of ships, the type of non-devil fruit abilities, Oda quietly pushes out the boundaries a little bit at a time to constantly expand the world and its possibilities. Before the captured Vivi arrives before Crocodile, we do get a very enlightening scene. A scene where we get a glimpse of Crocodile's underlying philosophy. As Nami, someone who has put her trust in Luffy to protect everything she holds dear, smack talks Crocodile, Crocodile takes note of that trust. But his mocking response is very telling. Trust is the most overrated thing in the world. Each One Piece antagonist has an underlying philosophy. Arlong's racial superiority, Buggy's material greed, Wapol's royal entitlement, just to name a few, and in each case, Luffy and the crew have defeated them, often due to or by directly opposing that philosophy. Now, Crocodile is giving his thesis on trust, or rather his lack of trust, and in retrospect, it explains a lot. The reason he's so unforgiving with the members of Baroque Works is because he doesn't trust them to do their jobs, he expects them to. And as soon as they fail to meet that expectation, he then discards them as a useless tool. You don't trust a hammer, you expect it to fulfill its purpose. They can't regain his lost trust after a failure because he never trusted them to begin with. It's the reason he gives the bare minimum information, because he doesn't trust Baroque Works members to know anything more, because who knows what they'll do if they've got more info than they need. In their introduction, Baroque Works said their motto was simply mystery, but that's just what the underlings think. Crocodile simply just doesn't trust anyone, so he does not reveal anything to anyone, not even each other's names. He doesn't want a group of people, he wants cogs to work in his machine. Keep this point front of mind because I'll be bringing it back up shortly and throughout the rest of Alabasta. Vivi arrives, tries to take out Crocodile, and of course, because Vivi's not allowed to succeed using force, fails. Crocodile reveals the name of his fruit, the sand fruit, and much like Smoker can turn to smoke, Crocodile can turn to sand. There's something about this panel that I really like, the way that Crocodile looks like he's engulfed Vivi, how the dark of her cloak bleeds into the darkness of his fur coat, the way that he's covering her mouth, taking away Vivi's greatest strength and her way of stopping the rebellion. This moment is the absolute low point of the saga for the heroes. Luffy captured, Vivi powerless against Crocodile, Alabasta's greatest warrior defeated, and to top it all off, Operation Utopia has just begun. The first step of Operation Utopia, destroy what remains of King Cobra's reputation amongst his people. As the guards in the palace freak out about their missing monarch, Koza rushes towards Nanohana, where he has just been sighted. Thinking back to a time near the start of the rebellion before he had even joined, we get to see another instance where Koza confronts the king for the sake of the people, but their different ideas on what is best for the country is what ends up causing Koza to join the rebels. Koza is young, he's impulsive, he wants the drought to be solved right now the easy way. Use the dance powder to bring the rain. But Cobra refuses. He understands that the people are suffering, but he also understands the long-term implications. The first country to use dance powder was attacked by its neighbors, costing many lives. He cannot let that happen to his country. It's a king's responsibility to think about the kingdom's future, just like his consideration, and Wapol's lack of, for the threat that Dragon could pose. Koza's reason for joining the rebellion isn't hatred, it's literally a difference in opinion. A stark difference, one that he feels he needs to use violence to resolve for the sake of the country, but he didn't think the king was evil, just terribly misguided in what should be done. But Bon Clay, using the face of the king and with Baroque Works members posing as soldiers, removes any reason for the rebels and people to hesitate. He admits to using the powder, kicks a child, Kappa, shoots Koza, and sets fire to the town. Now, I really like Bon Clay, but man, he is just terrible in this scene. He, I guess I'll say, justifies his actions in the fact that he's just being true to himself. The iffiness, the confusion that he's sown pleases him because he's just so iffy himself. He's just reveling in the chaos of it all. Mr. One and Miss Doublefinger are also hanging around taking care of any witnesses to Bon Clay's carelessness, and they may have also been responsible for the giant ship also crashing into the town that the rebels made their base, though that could also be the work of other agents too. This ship is loaded with the weapons that the rebels otherwise lacked, and poor Koza, as ever strung along by Crocodile's scheme, thinks that these weapons are a sign of divine providence, a sign that it's time to attack. Chaka, back at the palace, is left confused and without his king, and despite what Cobra told him, is resolute to protect the palace, even though he should know that the people are the kingdom. Both sides think that they're protecting Alabasta, just as Crocodile intended. Crocodile indulges in a monologue outlining his struggles in putting together his plan, but Vivi doesn't wait for him. Even tied up with Crocodile right in front of her, she's determined to get to the capital to stop the fighting. But Crocodile is enjoying what he perceives as a victory. He is savoring Vivi's turmoil and throws what Vivi thinks is the key down to where he previously dropped Mr. 3, and he leaves Vivi with a choice: abandon her friends or abandon her country. She may just have enough time to make it to Alabasta before the rebels get there, but the room that Luffy and Co are trapped in will fill up with water within an hour. And Crocodile says a line that struck me: "You have to decide whom to bet on." It made me think, why is Crocodile's base a casino? Crocodile is by no means a gambling man. Like I mentioned, he expects people to do as he says, to operate without flaws, and if they fail, he gets rid of them. He hasn't taken an action that could reasonably be said to only have a chance to succeed. Sure, he didn't count on Luffy and the crew rescuing Vivi, defeating Mr. 3, etc., but that was a miscalculation, not a gamble. It's why he doesn't trust others, because he sees trust as a gamble. The chance that someone would betray his trust means he won't trust anyone. So why a casino? I can think of two reasons. The fact that Rainbase is the city of dreams and has a casino at its center, well, that makes me think of the dream the casino implies. Crocodile takes advantage of people's dreams to become wealthy in order to gain his wealth. He exploits their hope. He mocks the hope of Toto, faithfully digging away to find water, and even actively impedes him by sending periodic sandstorms that he stirs up with his own powers. This is why he enjoys mocking Vivi, because he derives pleasure from taking away the hope of others. And that leads to the second reason. The house always wins in the end. That is Crocodile's character, the character of his plan. Yes, people in his casino may occasionally make some money, but over time, Crocodile will always come out on top. It's guaranteed. His years of planning, of preparation, even though Vivi and the Straw Hats have been a little bit of a setback, he will work around them to make sure he comes out on top. And for a moment, it looks like Crocodile has won. Vivi, for a moment, gives up hope. But Luffy, he's someone who embodies hope, and as he encourages Vivi to keep fighting, we can see Crocodile twitch. He doesn't like that he's failed to crush Luffy's spirit. And bless her, Vivi tries, but of course she's not allowed to succeed in fighting as per usual. Though it makes me think back to this scene after Little Garden, Vivi thinking back on words Igaram said to her, that she must make sacrifices, even betray others in order to stay alive and save the kingdom. But in this moment she's going against Igaram's words. She has chosen not to betray the Straw Hats, she has chosen to rescue them. But even if she's struggling, there's no need to worry, Vivi. You have Sanji. Sanji, the proud proprietor of Restaurant Le Crap, posing as Mr. Prince, calls in. I love the verbal beating Sanji lays into Crocodile, mocking him for revealing so much info back in Little Garden, which Crocodile obviously loathes. Though it sounds as though things have taken a turn midway through the call, Vivi has taken this moment to make it to the stairs, ready to run outside and get help. But the house always wins. Crocodile pulls her back down to the ground. He was lying when he gave Vivi her choice. So as soon as it looked like Vivi would have a chance, he had some hope, he drags her back down. Crocodile leaves to find Mr. Prince, and we cut back to Vivi, and despite Crocodile's intentions, she still hasn't given up. When times have looked hopeless for her in the past, Luffy and the crew have come through and saved her, so now is her turn. And here, she finally manages to wound a banana gator. The first time we see her fight solo and succeed, not because she was aiming to defeat the creature, but because she was determined to escape and rescue her friends. When Vivi's goal is to defeat the enemy, she fails. When her cause is to save, she succeeds. As she runs outside to find a collapsed bridge with Crocodile chasing who he thinks is Mr. Prince on the other side of it, there is our boy. He's here for Vivi just as promised. That is not to say that Chopper isn't being an absolute trooper. He's posed as Mr. Prince, getting Crocodile's attention and giving him the slip. He may be terrified, but he really wants to help out his newfound family. Now it's all about the rescue. Oda quickly establishes that they can't destroy the cage as a banana gator breaks its teeth attempting to do so. Zoro too regrets that he's unable to shatter the cage, similar to his feelings on being unable to break Mr. Three's candelabra. Smoker takes a moment to try and raise the stakes, saying that Miss All Sunday has a 70 million berry bounty and the whole world is in danger. But of course, Luffy doesn't care about any of that. He wants to kick Crocodile's butt for Vivi's sake. Luffy, even in this situation, only moves for his own interest or those of whom he cares about. As the tension and the water rise, Sanji arrives with an impressive kick which notably causes the banana gator to barf out a chunk of staircase it had swallowed. Why did Oda have to show us that? Because as Smoker assists and tells Sanji which banana gator to target, the preceding Sanji kicks result in upchucking a large ball of wax containing Mr. 3. This is why I like to mention little details that Oda leaves. Sanji's kick makes a gator upchuck something unimportant, so a second kick has it buff up something important. Same with Mr. 3. We saw his wax house break the teeth of a dinosaur back in Little Garden, so it was reasonable to assume that it would have survived the teeth of a banana gator when it mattered. The key is also revealed, but the vindictive Mr. 3 throws it away. Not that it mattered, the house always wins, so Crocodile had never thrown down the real key to begin with. His gamble with Vivi was rigged from the start. Though his lack of trust in his subordinates, his unwillingness to give them a second chance, this is what allows the Straw Hats to escape, as Sanji, with the direction of Usopp, gets Mr. 3 to create a key for them out of wax. As the room floods, we see everyone has made it out alive, even Mr. 3 who just happened to be on top of a big piece of floating wood. This huge piece of wood was especially magnificent and had a record buoyancy of 13 splays. That's according to Floatus Stretchington. Mark that as the second of only a few times I'll refer to the SBS. As Nami sprays on her perfume, Smoker confronts Zoro, confused as to why he was saved. But that wasn't Zoro's choice. Zoro is pragmatic. He would have been fine leaving Smoker to drown. He's their enemy after all, but Luffy doesn't want him to die. Luffy doesn't bear Smoker any particular ill will. They're enemies in a broad sense, but no more than that. And Smoker, after hearing Luffy's goal to kick Crocodile's butt, after seeing his honest and straightforward attitude, after all this, White Chase lets them go. Smoker doesn't like pirates. He hates the warlords, but there's something about Luffy that means, just this once, he's willing to let them do what they plan. Luffy says a very important line for him, "I kinda like you," which is only a step below calling someone a good guy for Luffy, and then runs off. As Smoker gives updated orders, the Marines under him warn him what the top brass will think about it. But in classic Smoker fashion, he doesn't care what the higher-ups think. He's here to stop pirates. Underneath that desire is who Smoker has always been, someone that cares about protecting the innocent. So having let Luffy go, there's now a bigger target he needs to stop. And I'll also note that only a few chapters before this, we reached the conclusion of Django's cover story. Chopper catches Nami's scent, another thing foreshadowed and paid off, and he arrives on a crab mover, a truly glorious creature to behold, and Eyelashes, the camel's friend and implied fellow womanizer. As they race towards the capital, Crocodile grabs Vivi, but Luffy gets her free and takes her place. It's not Vivi's job to take on Crocodile, that's what Luffy is here for. Vivi is the one to stop the rebel army, and Luffy's responsible for kicking Crocodile's butt. She's worried, of course, but the crew remind her of the lesson Luffy taught her before. She's no longer alone. Her burden is shared with the rest of the crew, so she only needs to focus on what she can do. So Vivi does the only thing she can do in this situation, something Crocodile can't. She trusts in Luffy. Now Luffy faces down Crocodile alone, and he does my job by summing up both Vivi and Crocodile. Vivi's strength isn't in her muscles, in her fighting ability, but in her big heart. She may be naive, but that's why Luffy will take her burden and fight on her behalf. Crocodile, who doesn't trust anyone, takes that all as foolishness, but Luffy calls him out. If Crocodile rejects friendship, does not allow himself to be so close with someone that he'd put his own life on the line for them, then he is the fool. And with that, Crocodile throws down a timer, 3 minutes, he's a busy man after all, and their fight begins. The fight is in 3 parts, with the first part being the most simple. Luffy throws out a bunch of iconic moves, but they have no effect. They do have the hilarious side effect of continuously stopping Crocodile from talking, which Crocodile finds especially vexing. The second part of the fight, when Crocodile starts showing off his moves, an attack that cleaves the earth, being able to create a giant quicksand hole that Luffy barely escapes from, then a slash which sucks the moisture out of Luffy's arm. Luffy does attempt some fighting back. He tries to catch Crocodile in his finger net, but this Warlord of the Sea is a step above Arlong, so Luffy continues to be unsuccessful. Then the fight transitions to its third phase as Luffy regains the strength of his arm thanks to the water given to him by Toto, and Luffy repeats his line, "Yuba won't lose to the sand." Then he tries a desperate but frankly pretty considered move and tries to eat Crocodile. But unfortunately, Crocodile breaks free, more angry than ever. He's frustrated that despite the clear difference in ability, Luffy hasn't given up. So the fight enters its final phase as Crocodile whips up a sandstorm and sends it towards Yuba. Luffy can't stop it, so he grabs onto Crocodile, telling him to stop. Toto has nothing to do with their fight, but why should Crocodile care about that? He's never cared about people getting caught up and killed in his scheme to take over Alabasta, and in this moment when Luffy is distracted trying to get Crocodile to stop the sandstorm, Crocodile pierces through Luffy with his hook. To Crocodile, Luffy is just one of many greenhorn pirates on the Grand Line. We look at the rest of the crew, stressed out about Luffy's fight. Sanji takes some shots at Zoro keenly and importantly reminding us that Sanji observed Zoro's fight against Mihawk and saw Zoro lose, and he projects onto Zoro that he's worried about Luffy also losing against a Warlord of the Sea. No one, though, is more worried than poor Vivi, but she does her best to trust in Luffy, which helps the rest of the crew cool their heads. I think Oda shows us this scene here because, to the readers, this looks like a moment to lose hope. It looks like Luffy has lost, but we need to trust in him. The other person we see is Toto, finally having struck a wellspring of water. His hope and perseverance have paid off, even as another sandstorm rages towards him. In a single page, we see the contrast: Toto's hope and Crocodile's attempts to destroy it. The battle between those who trust, just as Toto has continued to trust the king, and how the Straw Hats trust Luffy, and Crocodile who trusts no one. As Crocodile gloats, mocking Luffy for throwing his life away due to compassion, the pierced container of Yuba water trickles down his arm, and Luffy grabs it, causing Crocodile his first, albeit minor, bit of damage. The container of water, the result of Toto's hope and trust, has touched he who has been, up to this point, untouchable. Crocodile throws Luffy down into the quicksand pit and makes his exit, but as Luffy manages to get his head out, he shouts out for meat. He's not out of this fight just yet. This is where it would be an obvious time to stop this part. Oda gives us another map after all, but I'll be going one more because there's someone I haven't talked about this whole time. Yes, Miss All Sunday, or as she is revealed to be, Nico Robin, pulls Luffy from the sand, and I find it pretty nice that Luffy tries to thank her for it. It's been obvious this whole time that Miss All Sunday has had her own agenda this entire saga. She's done as she's told by Crocodile, but won't actively go out of her way to help in his plan. Rather, she's responsible for beginning to unravel it. Her reactions over the chapters covering this part have also been worth noting. She defaults to this smile that never reaches her eyes, but when her expression changes, that's worth noting. In her confrontation with Pell, when she hurts Pell and Vivi, her smile fades, her dry heh looks like it's delivered with a frown, as though she doesn't actually like to hurt people, or at least these people. Her other laugh before then is when she's tricked Pell into thinking that she's seriously injured Vivi, teasing him, so her sense of humor is a little out of whack, perhaps. When she's back with Crocodile, she barely speaks and holds that same empty smile, but when Crocodile is laughing and reveling in Vivi's hopelessness, Robin's face is hidden. We can't see her smile and she doesn't seem to be laughing along with him. But when Sanji calls and starts making fun of Crocodile, she smirks. As Crocodile is distracted chasing Chopper, Miss All Sunday notices Sanji going inside the casino and does nothing. And finally, when Luffy calls Crocodile a fool, she's the one who laughs. She doesn't seem interested in the success of Crocodile's plan, she doesn't revel in the suffering of others, she doesn't seem to like Crocodile. She does, however, also appear to be very unattached to her own life with her nonchalant response when Crocodile threatens to kill her. Though now, as she rescues Luffy, we get a peek beneath the surface when she asks why Luffy fights as one whose name is D. And for the first time, we see her thoughts, as with no empty smile but a look of seriousness she ponders, just who are you people? The only person we've seen who knows about the importance of the D initial was Dr. Kureha, 139 years young, in a saga where we've been going further back into the past, and now we see someone who, at least appears, young, who seems to have similar knowledge. More than that, she's inquisitive about Luffy's initial. She wants to know more. Oda is giving us an inkling as to what Robin is truly after. He also shows us that her fatal blows were all false. Pell is alive, though she does warn him that he is more injured than he believes. She then informs him of who Luffy is so that Pell will help him. And then we also see another familiar face, Igaram, also alive and well. Robin is clearly after something in this kingdom, something that she needs Crocodile to get a hold of, but there is something in her, though she may deny it, that wants to stop Crocodile's plan from coming to fruition. As we bring this part to a close, Oda updates us on the location of all the major players. Smoker is heading out to sea, but sends Tashigi and the Marines to the capital at Alabasta, and interestingly, he leaves it up to her to decide what she must do, leaving her to follow her own sense of justice. I won't talk about that line now, but don't worry, I will before this saga is done. The rebels are charging towards Alabasta, only 5 hours from arriving, convinced they are saving it from destruction. The royal army is preparing to meet them, ready to defend the kingdom with their lives, but as we get to see what happened to King Cobra, kidnapped by Mr. Four and Miss Merry Christmas, we see him lamenting the situation, hoping that the rebels and the army do not fight, since the people are the country. We see Toto facing Crocodile Storm head-on, declaring that Yuba will never be destroyed, keeping strong with the hope that, once the sandstorm is over, the rain will come. And finally, we see the Straw Hats racing towards Alabasta on the Crab Mover, using the incredible power of Nami standing completely still in a sexy outfit to encourage the crab to walk on water. At least for a little bit. So they start swimming until they are confronted by a giant Sandoran catfish about to eat them, but it is defeated by Luffy's Kung Fu Jugon disciples, who then escort them to the other shore. With only 3 hours left, they are met by Best Boy Karoo and the Supersonic Duck Squadron, all ready to carry them the rest of the journey. Their friends, their allies, the very wild life of Alabasta is moving so that Vivi will get to Alabasta on time. And with only 1 hour left until the rebels and army clash, we see the officer agents waiting for Vivi's arrival, ready to take her out. And that's where we'll end this part. From the depths of despair to the light of hope, there's going to be a lot of fighting next part as the Straw Hats face off against Baroque Works, and I'm excited to cover it. I frankly wasn't so sure what this part was going to be about when I started writing it, but it really is Oda setting up that conflict of hope and trust against Crocodile's despair and lack of trust? Distrust? I wish there were a better word for it. Let me know in the comments if there's anything else you took away from this section of the story, other things that you noticed that I didn't, because it's not I attempt new things, it's we attempt new things. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a fruitful day.